Welcome to 8 Stories, the entertaining, uplifting, and informative podcast for people who are passionate about enriching the multifamily experience. I'm your host, Sharon Cauthen, and together, let's take an enlightening journey across the multifamily landscape, sharing innovative ideas and heartfelt stories from communities nationwide. 8 Stories is brought to you by Multifamily Media Network, delivering the latest news, ideas, and inspiration across the multifamily sector. Now, let's jump into today's stories. Hello. Welcome to another episode of 8 Stories. I'm your host, Sharon Cauthen, and in every episode of 8 Stories, we try to share chronicles about business and about life and how those narratives may apply not only to your business and professional development, but also to your personal life, your personal growth, how that affects yourself and your relationships. And I have a statistic for you? Since our industry primarily serves the multifamily space, did you know that there are 18.5 million apartments in the United States? It's a staggering number. And we serve the people who live in those apartments. So it's more than just the buildings and the grounds and the rent collections. It is serving the actual humans who are living their life and growing their families and achieving their goals inside the walls of those apartments. And it really is a privilege. If you stay in our business with a heart to serve, you're privileged to have a front row seat to all of that life in front of you. And it is a joy. Now, I won't pretend it's always a joy. There are times it's really difficult. But if we center ourselves on service and on joy, then even the difficult situations become more manageable. If a resident is really hot under the collar, you can approach that with service and with joy in your heart and with a genuine ambition to have them leave your office content, heard, with the knowledge that you're there. You're going to take ownership of the situation and you're going to do what you can to make it better. Instead of trying to win a fight, you can win a relationship by approaching it with that sort of heart for service. So anyway, today's episode is interesting to me, at least. I hope it will be for you. But if it's your first time joining us, thank you. Please take a second, and if you like the episode, subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any future episodes. And I would love it if you'd leave some of your own stories in the comments, because this is a community we're growing here, and it works best when we all contribute to it. So today's episode is going to be about estate sales. Does that seem like a jump? So here's the thing. I really like estate sales. I like to go, and there's the thrill of discovering something really special. I'm really driven to antiques and to kitchenware and to anything for the garden. So you never know what you're going to find in an estate sale. So they tell the story of someone's life. Most estate sales happen because the current residents of those homes have either passed away or moved on into a situation where they will have more support in their care. And so there's no way to take everything that they owned with them to either place. What is remarkable, though, is the stories that the home tells about the residents who are there. I never met the people. I went to one really recently, and I never, of course, met the people who lived there. But the estate sale tells the story of how they lived their life, how they spent their time, where they spent their money, what they valued, and what their home meant to them. When someone passes away, it is really up to their heirs. What will they take on? What memories do they want to take from the home? And then what is left up to be sold to other people? Listen, my children already know what they're going to fight over, joyfully. We have a bunch of carved masks in our home, and they all want to fight for those. But there's just no way. They both have full lives as well. When the time comes that we're gone, they can't possibly take everything we own into their lives. They would start exploding at the seams, busting at the seams. So it is an interesting perspective when you see these things that people loved and what they collected. There's a real story in what people collect. You never know what you're going to see. They collect all sorts of things that often don't have a lot of financial value, but they speak volumes about their lives. Some of the things that I saw were matchbooks from restaurants, from places they'd traveled. They had a whole jar filled with just these matchbooks. And what a sweet little token to sort of serve as a reminder of a place that they had visited or a meal that they had enjoyed together. There are a lot of magnets. I have to confess, my husband really likes magnets. And one day I packed them all up and it took no time for him to notice that they were not out anymore. So I confess that we have magnets, and I would prefer that we didn't, or that there was another place for them to live. But nevertheless, I digress. There are old magazines I found stacked high, and it's from whatever you're interested in. Is it Architectural Digest? Is it Sports Illustrated? What's your cup of tea when it comes? Is it People Magazine? But people do collect those things and tend to not realize how big the volume has grown of all the things they own. Another thing is sports memorabilia, all sorts of things from your favorite team. And they did have a lot. But what was really sweet was I saw this little boy was there with his dad, and he saw a bat that had signatures on it. And that little boy's eyes lit up. And he's like, Dad, there's signatures on the bat. And I don't know whether they ultimately bought the bat or not, but just to see another generation sort of get excited about something that they saw at an estate sale was a really lovely thing to see. There's also bigger things. There's like closets full of expensive clothes and shoes, kitchens that are overflowing with gadgets and gizmos, and rooms filled with antique furniture. Basements, there's every tool you can imagine. A lot of memorabilia lives in the basement too. And every corner of the homes is sort of a reflection of how these people spent their days and what mattered to them. You know, we went to this estate sale and we saw something and fell in love with it. And, well, we made a big mistake. We didn't measure it. It was a giant, and I do mean giant, cedar blanket chest. And we knew we wanted it. Miraculously, we managed to get it into the SUV. And when we got home with it, it's too bad we don't have cameras inside our house, because it was a comedy routine of my husband and I moving this giant chest and a tape measure from room to room to room and trying to figure out where it could live, because we live in a small historic farmer's cottage. And so there's not a lot of excess space. And we'd be in a bedroom and say, well, what if we got rid of the nightstand? And what if we moved the bed over there? Like, we're rearranging our house to try and find some place for this blanket chest to live. And if you peek over my shoulder, actually you get a little glimpse of it, because we moved a bookshelf and moved in the giant blanket chest behind me. And I'm thrilled that it's there, and so are the plants. So anyway, I'll go step away from this furniture Tetris game that we basically played with the giant chest. So even though I don't know the people who lived in this house, I felt like I sort of knew them just from what I experienced in their home. She loved to cook. The kitchen was filled with beautiful kitchenware and well-worn cookbooks and all the tools that you can imagine. And a few of those came home with us. And the gentleman, he had a lot of woodworking tools. And it turned out that the blanket chest was handmade by him. And that made it all the more precious to us. Now, I don't know that makes it precious to the marketplace. If we went to sell it, it doesn't have some expensive brand name on it, but that someone worked with their hands and their labor and their heart and built this chest, it's all the more valuable to me. Not only did he have that, though, he also served in the Boy Scouts for years. He had a lot of scouting, like hats and plaques and badges and awards that he had been given by the Boy Scouts in gratitude for his service. So he was someone who spent a life really being in service of the Scouts. And I think that says a lot about his character too. They loved to travel. They collected fine art and pottery from around the world. Like I said, he enjoyed woodworking, and she had a lovely wardrobe, beautiful clothing. And all of her expensive shoes that were just a half a size, not mine, they were still in the original shoebox that she purchased them in. Maybe you all do that. I don't know. But I found it remarkable that there's 50 pairs of shoes laid out, and each one is in its original box with the original wrapping, with the original bag. I mean, it was really remarkable how well she cared for these items. She also collected dolls. And I think when it comes to dolls, you're either somebody who loves them or you're somebody who is kind of creeped out by them. And I fall into the second category. I find dolls, they're a little creepy. They're little doll eyes. So I didn't spend very much time looking at the dolls because they look back at you. And it's not for me. It's for somebody, I'm sure. Just not for me. But it did say something about her. And I don't want to put them each into a he, she category because those could be flipped. I don't think she served in the Boy Scouts, but certainly he could have been the cook and she could have been a woodworker. That's not the way it turned out, but anything can be the story because I don't know all of the true facts. There's only a few facts that I know and everything else it's sort of an assumption. But if I had to imagine what they were like, I would imagine that they were excellent hosts. They had all of the things that you would need in order to set a beautiful table, in order to make your guests comfortable. And so I did get a sense that they were very good hosts. And I don't know why, but I got the feeling that he was gentle and that she was kind. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I felt in their home. Some homes feel angry. I've been to a lot of estate sales where neglect and despair feel really evident in the home and in its belongings. And this house didn't feel like that. It felt like they had maybe gotten a little later in life and unable to care for it as carefully, but there was love in that house. But also for me, there's always a quiet sadness too, because these things that they treasured, that they spent a lifetime collecting, they're all just being sold at a discount. If you've never been to an estate sale, the first day is what they call full price, although they'll generally knock a little something off if you ask them to. Day 2 is 25% off. Day 3 is 50% off. So it's up to you. If there's an item you love, but you really want to get it at 50% off, then you gamble. That if you didn't, somebody else may have bought it at 25% off and it's not there. So it's always interesting to play the game of, will the table I really like a lot still be there when it's 50% off? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you get a giant chest. But their belongings were being picked over. Some purchased and appreciated, and others discarded, left behind, not quite up to snuff. I asked the man who runs the estate sales if he ever felt conflicted or sad about this transfer of objects, about selling off pieces of someone's life. He didn't hesitate. He said, no, I focus on the people who will give these pieces new homes and new appreciation all over again. I hadn't really considered that perspective. These things that were once cherished would now have new stories. Someone else would love them, use them, and give them meaning again. And that made me think one day people might be walking through our lives, inspecting what we've left behind. What will our belongings say about us? What story will the estate sale shoppers tell when they see our collections, our tools, and our furniture? What story do you want your home to tell and your life to tell when you're no longer there to tell it? If you've been part of the 8 Stories family for a while, then you know that my son Jack passed away last year. He was just 38 years old, far too young. But he left an incredible legacy of a well-loved life. His life was impactful, and his legacy lives on in the stories that the people who loved him tell about him. And so, yeah, there's a sadness, a great deal of sadness and grief, but also joy in remembering what an incredible human he was. I also have an Aunt Rachel. She's 98 years old. If she lives that long, at the end of March, she turns 99. But they just moved her to hospice. I always admired Aunt Rachel, so much so that I named my first daughter after her. And so through the years, anytime that we've been together, we've snagged a photo of the 2 Rachels together. And it's fascinating to see how they both changed and evolved in those years. But Aunt Rachel lived a fascinating life, just a big life and a big heart. And she also was kind and gentle and has a sense of humor and a twinkle in her eye that tells you that she gets it. So my daughter and I have been to visit her a few times since she's been in hospice, and she's out of it a lot of the time. But in the moments when she realized who we were, she brought a sweet smile to her face, and she held my daughter's hand. And it's lovely to let her know in a physical way that you are loved and you're safe, and we admire you and respect you so much. So she has quite a legacy as well. She has a huge story. After her husband passed away, she and her sisters traveled all over the world together, all over the world. And they would even get these matching T-shirts. And so they had some that said the sisters, and they were on a cruise somewhere. And people kept saying, have you seen the sisters? Have you seen the sisters? These women are all in their 70s and 80s at this time. And people thought they were nuns because everybody referred to them as the sisters. So they thought they were a group of traveling retired nuns. And that was not at all the case, but it really gave them a chuckle to know that people had assumed that's what the sisters meant. So what a great life and story and legacy she has. And so ultimately, it doesn't matter how long you live. We have so little control over that piece of the puzzle. It seems to me that what's important is how well you lived and loved and explored and celebrated and laughed. Both Jack and Aunt Rachel leave me with a huge handprint on my heart. They each had what I consider to be aspirational relationships and experiences. Aren't I lucky to have loved them both? You see, every day we're creating our legacies. In the choices we make and the things we hold dear and how we spend our time, we're telling our own story. My challenge to all of us is to live that story with intention. Because in the end, when it's all said and done, what will be your legacy? What will people say about you? What will the people who never knew you but walked through your home have to say about what you said was important? How did you value your time? Because really, money is also a product of time. So it comes down to, where do I place value on my time? Is it in travel? Is it in collecting things? Is it in service? How do I spend my time? So I just want to encourage us to, until next time, let's try to live thoughtfully. And remember, our legacies are being written piece by piece every day. So what will be your legacy? What will be mine? I'm still working on it every day. Thank you for joining me today on this reflective episode of 8 Stories. Until next time, let's live thoughtfully and intentionally and work on our legacies day by day. Please take a moment, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and please share some stories about your legacy with me, because we all thrive by being part of this community, and I love to hear the voices of the other people in this community. Until next time, this is another episode of 8 Stories. Thank you for tuning in to 8 Stories. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. And don't forget, this podcast is proudly brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, your trusted source for stories, trends, and insights in multifamily living.